Hi guys, welcome back to The Contented Plant. Today we are talking all about the Philodendron Brasil. This is my Philodendron Brasil. I've had it for about a year and a half. It's growing really well. So I'm going to talk all about the care, tips, and tricks for this plant so you can grow yours happy and healthy as well. Let's get started. So this plant is definitely one of my favorite house plants just because it's so pretty. I absolutely love the leaves. I love the variegation on them. That veining that they have going down is so pretty. It also puts out a lot of different kinds of leaves. Some of them are not, they have barely any of the greens. This one you can see has just a little bit of dark green on the edge there. This one has a lot of dark green. So it really makes a cool, colorful plant that is such a pretty statement in your house. You can find this plant growing in warm tropical areas. It grows a lot in the rainforests of Brazil. It actually gets its name because that stripe and coloring looks a lot like the flag of Brazil. So the Philodendron Brasil is a hemiepiphyte, and what that means is it can live growing along the ground, and it can also live growing up a tree and creating kind of a canopy in the tree, and it can gather nutrients from the tree as well as from soil. So you can have this plant either as a hanging plant in a hanging basket, kind of like I have. You can see it just kind of grows down in a vine-like pattern, or you can train it onto a moss pole or trellis. It'll probably do really well there. It does love to climb, so if you let it climb, oftentimes you'll get bigger leaves and it'll be kind of a happier, healthier plant. I, however, like to have it as a hanging plant because I think it's just beautiful in a hanging basket. If you have a smaller one, you can keep it as a tabletop plant for a while. When I first got this one, it was only in a little 6-inch pot, and it was just little. It just kind of sat right here. I had it in a lower light area, so it wasn't growing very fast. So I kind of had it as a tabletop centerpiece for a while, and it did really well like that. When I moved it to a brighter area, it just exploded in growth, and we will talk a little bit about that too. So the lighting needs for this plant can vary. Honestly, you can keep it in a lower lit area and it will survive, it will grow, and it will do okay. Or you can keep it in a brighter lit area. I keep it in this window right behind me, and it gets bright and direct light most of the day. In the morning, it will have a little bit of direct light on it, and as you can see, it's just exploded in growth. I used to have it in my bedroom, which was a lot darker, and I had it on a little end table, and it grew quite a bit slower there. So if you have it in a darker area, it will grow slow. If you put it in an area with brighter light, you will have explosive growth happening. The other thing about the lighting to note is if it's in a darker room, it's not going to put out a lot of variegation. And by that I mean this striping down here. So these ones right here are sitting towards the window, and you can see they have a lot of variegation. This leaf is almost completely lighter colored with only a splash of dark green. The ones, when I had it in my room, it was starting to put out a lot of leaves like this that were completely dark green and no variegation at all. And that's because the plant produces chlorophyll in the darker green areas of the leaf. These will not photosynthesize quite as well, these leaves that have the lighter green. So in order to protect itself, the plant will revert and start putting out darker green leaves if you have it in an area that's not quite enough light. And that just means it's soaking up all the light it can, and it needs a little bit of extra help. So if you notice your plant is putting out really dark leaves, very light variegation, then I would move it to a brighter lit area. The watering for this plant is pretty simple. It's kind of like a pothos or any other philodendron. It does like to have moist soil, so I water mine about every 1.5 to 2 weeks. I always do the soil test, which is I just put my finger down in there, and if it feels really dry, then I will go ahead and do a nice thorough watering. If it's a hanging plant like this, you can also go behind it and just kind of lift up the bowl and see if the bowl's really light. That's a good way to tell really easily. When I do water this plant, I do not water it from the top. What I do is I take it down and I will put it in my sink, and I will literally saturate this thing, and I will just let it sit in massive amounts of water and really let all the soil saturate. This is very helpful to the plant because, one, you don't have air pockets in there or dry pockets of soil where the roots aren't getting any water. That really will ensure that you have really good root growth all around the plant. Bottom watering is a great option for this plant as well. What you don't want to do is walk by and just trickle a little bit of water in there every couple days. That is not a good idea. For one, that'll keep the soil moist all the time and you're risking root rot. Two, it doesn't help the root growth because you're keeping all the water right at the top of the plant. You want the plant to grow big, beautiful, healthy roots all the way down to the bottom of the pot. So I would suggest giving it lots of water so that it can continue to grow those nice, healthy roots. I like to have this one in 80% potting mix, 10% perlite, and 10% orchid bark. That seems to keep my hemi-epiphytes really happy, and they do really well in that substrate mix. So this grows a lot like a pothos. You can see I have my marble queen up behind me here, and again, it just vines down. There are a few differences, however, this one, it's really interesting. The vine is pretty twisty. And what I've noticed is when I have it in my window like this, my window is behind it, this long vine. So what happened is this vine actually trained itself to go backwards so that the leaves were pointing out of the window so that they're getting the most sunlight, because this plant decided, hey, the sun's back there, so I'm gonna go ahead and point myself over that way. It also is really curly. It kind of has a curlier thing, whereas a pothos vine kind of grows straight down. An easy way to tell the difference between a philodendron and a pothos plant is to look at the leaf growth. You can see the leaf is coming out here, but it has this sheath thing here that is called a cataphyll, whereas a pothos will just grow directly from the vine. It will not have any sheath covering the leaf when it comes out. This plant is incredibly easy to propagate. If I were going to propagate this one, I would definitely go from this long vine here. And you can see where it has the aerial roots coming out. So what I would do is I would take scissors and I would cut right in between here. This is the internodal spacing right in between these two nodes. There would be a node here and there would be a node here. The rule of thumb is there's kind of a node right where the leaf growth is. So you would just snip into 1-inch sections right in between that internodal spacing, and you can either put them into a cup of water, obviously with the node side down and the leaves out so they do not rot, or you can propagate these in damp sphagnum moss. You can put them in moist soil. As long as you keep it evenly moist for about 2 weeks until those roots start to grow down, you'll have a plant. So it's super, super easy. Another interesting thing about this plant that I just learned recently because I had to look it up, you can see my last leaf here looks a little bit pink. It actually has kind of a pink stripe down the back of it. And the vine is actually turning a little bit pink, whereas up here it's green. Right at the end there, it kind of changes into pink. And what I think's going on is the vine is just growing incredibly fast in the window there. I noticed it's only happening on my vines that are putting out a lot of growth very quickly. Like this leaf just popped out a week and a half ago and it's already ready to pop out another one. So it's just growing so fast. But when I looked it up, it said that this will turn green as the plant ages. So if you have pink happening on your leaves, don't fret. I can tell it's an incredibly healthy leaf. There's no problems with it. The vine feels great. It's healthy. It's just turning pink, and it will turn green over time as the vine and the leaf ages. So for potting, my rule of thumb is always if your plant is either drying out super fast or you have roots that are coming out the bottom of the drainage holes, then it's a good idea to go ahead and repot. Otherwise, I kind of let my plants be, especially if they seem to be really happy and they're putting out a lot of new growth. I don't worry about repotting them. Honestly, it just kind of messes with them, and unless it really needs to be repotted, I would just leave it alone. For fertilizer, I give this a low dose fertilizer about once a month through the summertime. I also water them with my fish tank water, which has a lot of nitrates in it from the fish waste. So that really helps the plants out too. The common questions that I've received about this plant are yellowing leaves or browning leaves. Oftentimes, yellowing leaf is almost always a watering issue, and that means you've probably overwatered your plant a little bit. If you suspect your plant has root rot, I would go ahead and take it all the way out of the soil and inspect those roots. If it does have root rot, you will need to cut off the old brown roots that are kind of mushy and icky and give your plant a thorough wash, usually in a hydrogen peroxide mix. If your plant is getting brown leaves, oftentimes that's because it's being really severely underwatered or you have it in bright direct sunlight and that sunlight is actually burning your leaves, so you would want to move it away. Okay, that's all I have about the Philodendron Brasil for today. If you guys have any questions about this plant, please leave them down below. I also have a post up on my website that I will link down below, and it just details all the care needs and goes further in depth on this plant if you would like to read it. Otherwise, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at The Contented Plant. Have a wonderful day, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.